Welcome to this week's video in the Skillful Living series. Last week I focused on how best to nourish ourselves, body, mind and spirit during these times of circuit breakers, even if they're easing, these times of being very careful when we go out. Today I want to focus on an aspect of family life and I want to focus on the relationship between parents and children. And I've seen a lot of change just around me during this period of lockdown or circuit breaker. In Singapore, we didn't have a full lockdown, so people still went out with their kids in the evenings, at least inside their own housing developments. So I saw a lot of parents and children together. In the past, I've only seen children playing with other children, which of course is very important for their development. But I think what perhaps may have been missing was children playing also with their parents, which perhaps is also important for their development and for the strengthening of family ties as well. So now when I go out for my evening walk just around my condo, I see parents and children walking together, playing football, just a makeshift football, not organized sport, or playing badminton, cycling. Sometimes the child is cycling, the parent is walking, especially with the very young children. So parents really relating to their children, engaging with their children. And I think I want to suggest that we find some way of holding on to this togetherness and to these shared fun times as well, even when we have the opportunity of going back to our old normal. Perhaps we don't want to go back exactly to that old normal. So obviously children and parents both have more time now. So maybe that's something we need to focus on as well. Do we want to make more time for our own family, even once the threat of the virus is over, whenever that might be? And all along the way as well, as the circuit breakers and lockdowns ease during that period as well, do we want to continue to nurture our family relationships a little more than we did before? In this context, I also want to say that one of the things that the threat of the virus has shown us is exactly how important our families are to us. And I think perhaps especially how important our children are to us. So let's not lose that focus. I hope that even at home, I don't see the families at home, but I hope that even at home they're spending more time together and having perhaps deeper conversations, better communication. So talking to your children, but also listening and responding to their thoughts and feelings, whatever they're expressing. I do know from children I work with that they are enjoying this extra time now with their parents. So I had a 12-year-old boy tell me how happy he is that he has so much more time with his father now, who can't travel, of course, these days. So he's much more home-based now. Children are also spending more time with siblings as well. So within the home, I have 2 young girls I work with. I teach them, 8 and 10 years old. They told me about how much they enjoy baking together with some help from their mother. In the past, perhaps each of the girls would have just done something else with her own age group, with her own friends or classmates. But now the 2 sisters are also sharing many activities together. They watch films together once in a while as well. I'm not sure we want our children to be watching films all the time, but once in a while, if the family watches something nice together, that might be pretty good as well. And another 12-year-old girl told me that she starts each day by doing a mindfulness practice with her father, Now, I don't know if they were doing this even before this current period in our lives. They may have been, but I suspect she would have been quite stressed early in the mornings, getting ready for school, commuting to school, and so on. So now she has more time and more relaxed time. And I think this might be something we want to think about as well. How stressed our children must be from all this endless activity they engage in during normal times. I'm putting normal in quotation marks. So in Singapore, where I live, children are beginning to go back to school with their masks on and practicing social distancing. So it's not back to normal, but it's at least a semblance of normal. And that's great, so they can interact with their teachers and their classmates and other students in their school, which is wonderful. But I think this may be the time when parents want to take the lead to hold on, as I said, to that family time that has somehow come about during this period. Maybe, maybe baking together, watching a film once in a while, reading, cycling, whatever they do. Also, perhaps making sure that families have meals together, or at least one meal a day together for the whole family, ideally without phones and other devices. During this period also, people have been looking for online webinars and programs for themselves. Adults have been looking for themselves and also for their children. So I myself have been teaching a small group of children a program which focuses on qualities of the heart, mind, and spirit. So this is not an academic program. And I must say the children have been extremely responsive. They've taken to it like a duck to water, and that's been very heartening for me. But I have to wonder, once they go back to a full school day, including the extracurricular activities, will they still have the time, the attention span, and the calmness to attend programs that don't focus only on academics or sports and so on? So this brings me to an article I read recently based on interviews with teachers in schools in the United States. And one teacher said that a child who had been extremely disruptive in class before the lockdown in her city is now really focused in the online classes. So this is an interesting thing, how this learning from home may have changed behaviors in some cases. This doesn't apply to all students, of course, but it's something to think about. And her explanation, the teacher's explanation, is that, well, the children are able to pace themselves better. They don't have to rush in the morning to get ready for school and commute to school. So maybe they're sleeping longer hours, getting their full 8 hours or whatever they want or they need of sleep. Also, they are not able to engage in extracurricular activities, which is not great in itself, but again, it offers us this opportunity to think about how much extracurricular activities. I think extracurricular activities are very important for, all-round development, but have we perhaps been overdoing? Have we, in some cases, even been pushing our children? So another teacher said that not all children join ECAs out of choice because they have a passion for something, they want to learn something or do something other than academic work, which in itself is very good. But she said sometimes they join to get extra credit, which looks good on their college applications. And sometimes I think they perhaps are pushed by their parents who can be ambitious for their children, which again is not a bad thing, but it's a question of balance really. And sometimes parents can be quite competitive. So some time ago, actually last year sometime, I was talking to a man who coaches 8 to 10-year-old children in playing cricket. And he said to me, he said, oh my God, it gets so competitive at times, and there are fights with the umpire over every decision. So I was really surprised. I said, such young children, really being so competitive? And he looked at me, he said, no, not the children, the fathers. So I think as parents, perhaps we should really take a good hard look at how much we are pushing our children. Do we want to help our children perhaps make time for other kinds of activities, for more rest? So I want to end this with a few questions that perhaps all of us can think about. First of all, how to develop perhaps easier school hours, including the extracurricular activities, how to balance ECAs and schoolwork with the need for sleep, because nearly every health expert tells us that children need at least 8 hours of sleep, and balance it also with the need for play, and perhaps for other programs, not only academic programs, which are important, but other programs which are also important to help them develop their emotional intelligence, for example, or just learn to live calmer, happier, less stressful lives, to be happy. I mean, that's important for adults and children. The other thing we might want to look at is the amount of homework that is prescribed to children. And there's one country in this world which has almost, I think, banned homework. That's Denmark. And apparently they've seen some good results. So maybe we want to just consider that issue as well. And of course, as I mentioned, ECAs, are we pushing our children into more and more ECAs? So it's not that any of these things are bad. In fact, they're all good for the children. But again, it's a question of balance. You can't do anything in life without time, energy, and attention. So where do we want our children to put their time, energy, and attention? How much of it to each of the things that are important for them in their lives, including rest? I think that's important too. And then there's one other question that comes up. Our children do seem to have been a bit overextended in the old normal, if I can call it that. But what about our teachers? Are they perhaps also overextended? I don't know, but I think it's a question worth looking into, because more and more I hear of children who are labeled disruptive, ADHD, and well, in the case of that article I mentioned before, the teacher referred to a student as the class clown. I'm not saying that these are completely untrue, irrelevant labels, but I think labeling never really helps very much. But more than that, I want to ask, if a child is, let's say, disruptive in class, does that child need more or less attention? By simply labeling the child, are we saying, well, I don't have time to give this child more attention, which may be true, but that is surely not a very good solution. And also in terms of class work and homework, workload, does a child like that need more of that or less of that? Do all children need the same amount? I don't know. Again, I'm just asking. I think that's enough for this week. I will leave you with that. One last thought for parents. Do you want to be mentors to your children, as parents perhaps used to be once upon a time? Do you want to find the time and energy from yourself and from your children to be able to share your values, whether your children actually accept them or not going forward, but at least do you want to share your values, and do you want to just spend more time with your children, We all talk about quality time, but what does quality time really mean? We will need to put in time and energy if we want to improve our relationships and if we want to help our children to be more well-rounded individuals. That's all for today. Thank you. I will see you next week.